Hello everyone, and welcome to Untethered Fridays. You can see behind me that I finished the mural on my wall. Not that I painted this, I just put it up. But that's the mural, and then I've got pretend stained glass over there. It's really nice, and I've got a really cute, the fan's down there, but it's got a really cute rug that goes perfectly with the mural. Anyway, I just thought I'd point that out. So today I was thinking that we could talk about paths to growth through knowing yourself. Now, in a little bit, I'm going to have a Jen's Pen Live with Robin, who you may or may not know from previous shows. But she is a spiritual healer and a happiness coach. And I was taking one of her classes last night. I was on archetypes. And archetypes are basically, in storytelling, they are different characters that, I get further away from my face because this is all confusing. All right. They are different archetypes. There are different archetypes for, okay, in storytelling, archetypes are like basically characters or types of characters. Like there's the guide, there's the hero, there's the, mother, there's the, what? I don't know why I can't think of them right now, but there's like the gatekeeper, there's a million different archetypes that are in storytelling, and it's sort of the same thing with this. It's basically energies. So an archetype might be like the Fool, or I'm trying to think of ones that I'm not, because we'll talk about the ones that I am later. But also maybe there's a Don Juan and a detective and a bunch of different. An archetype can be anything, basically. Angels, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're one thing, right? Like an angel could be a bunch of different things. It could be like a good angel. It could be the angel of death. It could be whatever, right? The point is, when you find, so you have 4 survival archetypes, 4 main archetypes. One is, I'm going to start posting Robin's things on archetypes here. The child, the saboteur, the victim, and the... Why can't I remember? It's the child, the saboteur, the victim, and the prostitute. All of us. Men, women, non-binary, we all have a prostitute. And it's an energy. So like, we all have, in the sense, like the prostitute energy is like, what are you willing to sell yourself out for? And each of those, the 4 main main archetypes has like an archetype in and of itself. Like the children is different. Like the child, there's a different kinds of children, right? There's like the eternal child and the magical child and all this stuff. Anyway, the point is you figure out which of these energies that you generally inhabit. And you can kind of, there's like the light side and the dark side of it. And you can work on your dark side to become like the better version of it, and it's the same thing with the Enneagram. My friend, my housemate Amy, is teaching me about as she learns. It's about finding the patterns that your own patterns, because there's set patterns, right? Like throughout human history that people just always have been and always are, and the stories are always about these people, and they've always got these types, right? And in Enneagram, there's 9 types, and then each of them have 3 subtypes, so there's really like 27. In archetypes, there's 1 million. But you recognize these energies And because you recognize them, it's not a box that you're putting yourself in. These are growth mindset things. They're not about, oh, this is what I am and there's no hope for me because this is what I am. It's about recognizing your patterns, examining them and analyzing them, and figuring out how you can turn those weaknesses into strengths, right? And that takes work. Like, honestly, like, this stuff takes work. It doesn't. I thought when I first heard about like working on yourself, you know, when I was first started therapy like a long time ago. Sure, okay, yeah, that just meant going to therapy, right? It didn't really mean anything more than that to me. But it does. It means a lot. It's something you have to think about and work on every moment of every day to get better. And I know for me, when I, again, like thinking about something like that back when I was more depressed and wasn't taking care of myself, that sounded like a lot of work and I didn't want to do it. I was like, screw it. That's just too much. It's not worth it. Of course it is worth it. It's actually the only thing that's worth anything is to become a better self in your life. If you want to enjoy your experience on earth, no matter what the experience is, you must work on yourself. And that involves a lot of times admitting truths to yourself that you might not want to admit. But it was interesting because it was a larger group that I'm used to in these things. But I mean, only by a couple of people, but still, it definitely changes the dynamic. And but we're trying to find each other's all our survival archetypes, right? These archetypes, the child, the victim, the child, the saboteur, the victim, the prostitute. We're trying to figure out what they all were for us. So I inhabit a lot of the different children subtypes or children archetypes. I had trouble with that, but we were talking about the saboteur. It's like, well, what do you do to sabotage yourself? And it's like, well, I do a little bit of this, I do a little bit of that. Whatever fits the situation is what I do to sabotage myself. And it turns out like my saboteur is a dilettante, right? So it's someone who, and it's also a very integral part of my personality too, though. It's like someone who has a lot of different interests and, you know, studies this and studies that and studies this and studies that and, you know, works on this and works on that and is generally decently talented at the things that I put my mind to. But it's always been an issue for me, right? Like the fact that I can do so many things and I have lots of different interests and I go from one thing and if that doesn't work, I go over here, and if it doesn't work and I don't stick with anything, big time saboteur. And then we were talking about like the prostitute. So okay. So that's the saboteur. And if I'm the dilettante, right? What is the high side and the low side? I don't remember, but basically it's, you know, working to your strengths and realizing the potential and everything, right? So these are things that I recognize that I have to work on, basically, like picking something and sticking to it. That's something that I know that I have to do. I know that, but, and I have done that and I'm working on that as I do, as I build this company. But, yeah. So there's that. And then like, there's the prostitute energy that we all have, which is like, we all sell ourselves out for something at some point. Right. And for me, I was like, it's food. And what that really is, I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, and it was a joke and we're like, you know, Robin and I are like, yeah, I do just about anything for ice cream. But, it's really more about nourishment and nurturing for me. So that's what I sell myself out. That's where I compromise myself. I compromise myself for this like nurturing because of a lot of different things in my past. But like at a very, very young age, you know, like I was adopted, which is awesome and I love it and I'm very excited about it and I love adoption and it's a wonderful thing. And it was the best thing that could have happened to me. That being said, when you're taken away from your biological mother as a baby, there's some scars that you're not even aware of. I wasn't even aware of them for a very long time, but there's a lot of abandonment issues there, right? There's a lot. And then, you know, being given to the family that I was given to, you know, I wasn't always nurtured the way I needed to be nurtured. So I get like, that's my kind of weakness. And that's what I will compromise myself for. And often what I do to compromise myself is to eat foods that comfort me. You know what I mean? And that is, it's for me, it's compromising my integrity, because I tell myself that's not what I'm going to do. It compromises my self-respect, because it's like, why can't you control yourself? You know, but I do it anyway, knowing full well that's what I'm doing. Right? I know I'm going to regret this, but I'm going to go and eat it anyway. Stick it to me. Yeah, but it's, so I'm going to encourage you all basically to look at your life and kind of figure out how you sabotage yourself. How do you sabotage yourself? Why don't we start a conversation? If you're out there and you want to start a conversation, in the comments, how do you sabotage yourself? What is it that you do? Look at your life, look at the times that you have sabotaged yourself, and find the theme, right? Find what it is that you did to yourself. And learn from it, right? Like, I learned that I just do whatever it takes to sabotage myself. Like, so I'm all over the place, basically. And that's a matter of like coming back together, like coming in and focusing on one thing. It's hard, but that's what I have to do. So I'm going to ask you guys, what do you do to sabotage yourself? And what do you sabotage? And also, as far as like the prostitute comes, what are the things that you'll compromise yourself for? You know, and they're usually, you know, like often they're for security. You know, the archetype of the archetype might be like someone who stays with someone because they have money, and even though they're unhappy, like at least they have that security. Stuff like that. But it can also be the one that I just told you about. Like there's a bunch of different ways you can sell yourself out. Some people sell themselves out to belong to a group. Some people sell themselves out for love. You know, it's just a matter of we all do it. It just shows up differently. And the victim energy, we didn't really get into that because we spent so much time talking about everything else. But you know, the victim is when you think about like, why is this happening to me? Like why is the world like, why are all these bad things happening to me, rather than looking for how is this happening for me? What is this doing for me in my life? Sorry, I just got thinking about something else. So yeah, there's a way to know yourself. Those are interesting things to really examine, basic things about yourself. The child, right? Like there's the wounded child, there's the orphan child. Oh, so my prostitute, right? My prostitute's an orphan. I'm not an orphan child, but my prostitute is the orphan archetype, which is interesting. And I also think that it's so funny to me because, like, okay, so I have an orphan prostitute, like, so melodramatic. It's like, Amy said this to me and it was exactly what I was thinking. It's like Les Mis, right? Like, it's like this orphan child, you know, like, it's like all the tragic characters of Les Mis put together, like the most melodramatic story ever. It's the orphan prostitute. It's just it's funny to me that I would be that. Of course that's what I am, naturally. So yeah, so I thought that was really interesting. So what archetype is yours? What archetype is your prostitute? What archetype is your victim? You know, like, I'm not quite sure what my victim is, but like, where do you feel like you don't have you don't have power, right? So the saboteur is also your power, right? So like it can screw you over, but it's also where you get your power from, and that's true for the dilettante for me. You know, I'm kind of all over the place. What I'm sort of talking about here is knowing yourself, examining the patterns in your life, how you sabotage yourself, what you sell yourself out for, what part of you is still a child, like that very primal part of you. You know, some like my housemate's a nature child. I'm definitely not. I mean, not that I mean, I do love nature, and this is the thing I used to have connection to, you know, like there's the divine child, it's interesting. So yeah, look at your patterns, be honest with yourself, and think of ways you can turn them into strengths, the negative ones. What way do you sabotage yourself that you can turn into a strength? I'm not quite sure about the orphan thing, the orphan prostitute, how I'm going to turn that one around, but we'll see. I'll talk to you more about it later. But that's the thought that I think I want to leave you with, like, getting out of depression, changing the way you think about things. You have to be willing to change the way you think about things. You have to be willing to change the way you think about yourself. I remember when I was really in the throes of my depression, I just lost my train of thought. The 30 thoughts will come in at once and I lose the one that I was going with. Therapy, thinking about myself. I don't know, I just didn't think that you could change the way you think about things. I just thought things were the way they were, and that's not a growth mindset. You have to be willing. You have to be willing to change. And you have to be willing to be honest with yourself. And that's hard to do when you're depressed, because this is what it was that I was going to say. To me, there was no difference between accountability and blame. So I blamed myself for a lot of things, and I was very angry at myself for a lot of things. And to me, like, taking ownership of that was so difficult because I hated myself so much for it. And it wasn't until I kind of came to see the difference between blame and accountability and know that I had more agency than I thought that I had. That I was able to start clearing myself of these things, or at least trying to, right? Because that's the thing, is you keep working at it. It's not something that happens and that's it. Woo! I'm gonna sit down here. Okay. I have one of those kneeling chairs, and I was just getting uncomfortable, so I'm sitting on the part that where your knees go. So let's see. Let's talk about this way. Further back, further forward. Okay. So I encourage you to see that you can think about things differently and see that blame is not the same as accountability. I blamed myself for a lot and hated myself for a lot of different reasons. Very angry at myself. And when you're depressed, that's what is happening, right? You're angry at yourself. Anger turned inwards. And it's hard to stop that. One of the things that help, of course, is to recognize that your feelings are not you, and that you are not actually angry, you are feeling anger. That helps, right? When I think about the storm of anger around me that I direct towards myself, that's not me. It's just something I'm feeling. The thoughts I'm having are not me. They're just thoughts that I'm observing. So there's that. I want to, if you're out there and you blame yourself for stuff, I get it. But you gotta stop. And for me, that didn't start, I know I tell this story kind of often, but I want people to hear it. that didn't start with me suddenly thinking that I was worth it. That started with me being like, I can't keep living this way. And even whether or not I deserve to be forgiven, whether or not I deserve to forgive myself, doesn't matter, because if I don't do it, this is going to be my life for the rest of my life. And this can't be the rest of my life. My life for the rest of my life. It can't be. I have to change. And whether or not I deserve it, the thing that's keeping me stuck is not forgiving myself. So I'm going to forgive myself. And then, like, I figured it out from there, you know what I mean? But that's the first step. And it seems impossible, but you have to do it if you want to move forward in life. And a way to start kind of looking at that is to have compassion for yourself. And another way to do that is this is something that my housemate is really discovering, like, the Enneagram is really working for her, because it's helping her recognize these different patterns. And once she admitted to them that this was actually her, not just, she didn't want to admit that that's, you know, she was a type 1. She didn't want to admit that. But once she did, she started seeing these patterns, and she, you know, like, now you can change them. And you can work to change them. That can happen, and it will happen if you do it. If you work at it. So, rather than blaming yourself, see the patterns and recognize that everybody has patterns. Everybody has the light and the dark side. And, you know, rather than blame yourself, you can be accountable, right? So while you may have made a bad choice, these things are not, we can learn from them. I'm kind of babbling now, but we can learn from them. You can learn from any bad choice that you had. If you choose to see it as a learning experience, you can turn it around. And that's what I encourage you to do. And I'm tired, and I'm kind of going all over the place at this point. But, yeah, that's what I would like to impart to you, is that recognizing these patterns, everybody has patterns. Once you see your pattern, you can act to either change it or shift it so that your weakness becomes a strength. That's what I'm going to leave you with. Me and my orphan prostitute are going to go get some stuff done, maybe have a little lunch, and then I've got Jen's Pen Live coming up at 1:00. So be there or be square over on Jen's Pen page. Jen's Pen, of course, being the business that I'm building, my ghostwriting business that if you want to tell people about, you can tell people about. We write books for teachers, trainers, and coaches. So, you know, a teacher, trainer, or coach who needs a book, get in touch. All right, that's my commercial for the day. And thank you all for being out there. And I just, you know, like I was saying, you can be grateful. You can be grateful for every bad mistake, every bad decision you made, or any unuseful piece of information, useless decision that you made, or bad decision that you made, or negative decision that you made that negatively impacted your life. If you turn that victim thing around and you claim it, and you learn from it, and you move on wiser, you can be grateful for that experience. And that's been true for, you know, and even stuff that you didn't choose to do, other things that happened to you. If you learn from them, learn how to deal with it, you can be grateful for it, because it's adding to your emotional growth, emotional, spiritual growth. You can thank it. So, in closing, I will remind you, as I always do, that you can always choose to have a grateful day.